pursuit,
Mate, he's going.
and capture.
Shut up now!
The UK's most breathtaking police chases.
Deco.
When liberty's on the line, criminals will stop at nothing to get away.
Lethal list.
But the police will stop at nothing when it comes to catching them.
That car he is in is a weapon. That will kill people.
It's the classic game of cat and mouse.
Criminals are at their most vulnerable when they're using the road because they're actually the most visible.
They can run.
Decam. No! One running over the fields.
They can hide.
Get out the car! Get out the van! Stand still!
But there's no escaping.
Walk towards me.
You are Nick.
I want to catch the baddies. That's why I joined the job.
Coming up, a high-speed clash sends cops flying to the very edge of disaster.
The first thing goes through your mind is this is going to not end well and it's going to hurt.
It's all eyes to the sky as the drone is deployed on an urgent manhunt.
There was a real risk that this person would come back to the house and carry out the threats of burning down the house.
And a driver's desperate attempt to avoid pursuit and capture sends pedestrians running for their lives.
I started asking myself, why is this driver driving like this?
Sparks coming from the front of the wheels.
Every time a traffic cop is involved in a high-speed pursuit,
Got a vehicle failing to stop.
they're putting their lives on the line. Desperate criminals will stop at nothing to evade capture. And if that means ramming a police officer, then so be it. Traffic cop Sam Turner is racing to engage in an ongoing pursuit.
Earlier on today, there's been a robbery, quite a nasty robbery in Cleveland's police area, and there's a vehicle that's linked to that.
2 criminals were involved in attacking a woman, dragging her along the ground, stealing her handbag, and then making off in a Ford Focus.
When you go out to rob an old woman, then get into a car and make off, you've obviously got no respect for the law or members of the public regardless.
2 armed response vehicles are up ahead, locked on to the target vehicle.
So just behind the vehicle now, we're on the 66 eastbound.
The driver of that pursued vehicle is not in a calm state. Object of the exercise for him is to get away at all costs.
The pursuit has reached the A19 flyover, a 100-foot bridge over the River Tees.
240 behind the vehicle now.
Speeding at 80 miles per hour on the busy bridge, the runaway driver attempts to bully the pursuing officers into submission.
Suspects seem to think that ramming into a police car is going to stop the police from carrying on the pursuit, but it's simply not true.
These cops are resolutely holding their lane.
When you're rammed, you start to panic because your vehicle's completely out of control.
The police X5 has crashed.
The first thing goes through your mind is this is going to not end well and it's going to hurt. But when you're in the cars behind and you see your colleagues, it's an horrible feeling, absolutely horrible feeling. It breaks your heart because you just think that it might be all over now.
Against all expectations, the lightweight Ford Focus manages to unseat the much bigger X5, causing it to career towards the side of the bridge. Had the barrier given way, the cops would have been looking at a 100-foot plunge. The bridge is a sea of blue lights and wreckage. Sam Turner's priority is to get the paramedics to his injured colleagues.
Yeah, just keep going straight on, mate, through over the flyover, thank you. It's one of our own, isn't it? We want to ensure that they're fitting well. Ambulance are just heading up there now, so fingers crossed they're all okay. 6
miles away, police are locked on to the fleeing driver. PC Paul Dixon is racing to join the pursuit.
The information I'm being given now is that 2 officers are injured.
As the target heads into town, Paul's plotting an intercept.
Right, we're going to be quite close here.
It's a game of cat and mouse, and the odds are stacked firmly in Tiddle's favour. Paul's Fat Cat BMW X5 is a performance powerhouse compared to the base model Focus, but we know that this little rodent drives dirty.
It's through red traffic lights again.
The cops are closing the net, but this criminal is refusing to throw in the towel.
When a suspect makes that decision to evade capture in a vehicle, starts to ram police cars, for example, there really is no escape. But it's escalated to such a point that there seems to be no return.
Left hand, onto the road.
Frantically flinging his car between innocent commuters, the runaway has the drive to avoid capture. But does he have the skill? Police pursuit drivers undergo a series of rigorous training courses to ensure they can drive quickly and safely in any situation.
Vehicles off-road, safe to follow.
They are highly trained, highly skilled, highly experienced drivers. Most of the people being pursued are nowhere near that.
Back at the crash scene, PC Lee Wilson is assessing the carnage.
It's about a 100-foot drop on the opposite side. This barrier's designed to keep things like HGVs on. It's a hell of a force for it to crack the concrete where the support is. Nobody would have survived going through that and a 100-foot drop. There would only be one outcome, and that would be somebody would die.
The Focus driver's selfish desire to avoid capture may have life-changing repercussions.
Their determination is to get away, and they'll do whatever it takes. And if it means killing a police officer, then so be it.
A pair of bag thieves are being pursued.
We've been found victim at the reservation. 2 officers injured.
2 cops have been rushed to hospital as a result of this brutal four-wheeled assault. The driver of this Ford Focus has continued his desperate attempt to outrun the cops, but the net is closing, and PC Paul Dixon has set his sights on capture.
Went into the estate deco.
It's the next one. The drivers go into estates because it's comfortable for them. It's their background. They won't go to an estate somewhere where they don't know. It's their back streets.
As Paul prepares to put in the intercept, news comes in from the pursuit.
Vehicle's abandoned.
The driver and passenger have made off on foot. Coppers and dogs flood the area.
They know if they decamp, they can run into one of their friends' gardens. They know the local area like back of their hands.
Perseverance pays off, and the passenger is found cowering on the roof of an outbuilding. But the driver is still at large. Cops think he's headed for home.
We need to find and get to the driver's address as soon as possible because they can get rid of best evidence, change the clothes, dump things that will connect them to the crime.
The hunch has paid off. They've caught the suspect changing out of clothes that perfectly match the driver's description.
It's a classic evasion technique.
People have run home from collisions or pursuits and they've got naked, jumped in the shower, jumped into bed, put the PJs on, completely changed what they're wearing, acted like they've been watching a movie all night, eating popcorn, but we're not stupid, are we?
It's down to me, mate. Get that. Down for me.
No chance, mate. The game's up, and you're nicked.
I think once you've got hands on with suspect knowing he's hurt your colleagues and you've brought him off roads and he's going to be going down for a long time, It's fantastic. And when you get back to office as well, it's tea and cake all round.
And more fantastic news. The officers involved in the crash have escaped with only minor injuries. The passenger had already been convicted 41 times for 118 offences. He pleaded guilty to robbery and was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. The driver's shocking actions saw him plead guilty to robbery, dangerous driving, disqualified driving, driving without insurance, failing to provide, and attempting to cause GBH on 2 police officers. He was sentenced to 9 years and 7 months in prison.
I mean, you're talking about these 2 lads I work with. They've got families at home. Those offenders have tried to kill one of my colleagues, one of my friends. We're lucky that we haven't got 2 dead cops on our hands.
Police patrols are on constant lookout for suspicious cars.
Is it your vehicle?
When we see a vehicle being driven, sort of, whether it's just without due care and attention or dangerous driving, that gives us an idea that there might be something more in it.
All right, turn it off.
But when a driver fails to stop, suspicions are confirmed.
He is now making off. The vehicle is now failing to stop.
And it's time to pursue and capture.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Stay there. Stay there.
In Greater Manchester, traffic cop Chris Isley is starting his 12-hour shift patrolling the suburbs. An unassuming Vauxhall Astra has caught his eye.
The thing I found suspicious about this car was that it was driving along the road without any lights on. So it was just going to be a normal routine stop. There's always that moment, it's like the driver's making up their mind as if they've got something to hide, that are they actually going to go or are they actually going to stop? And there was that pause.
The Astra driver has clocked the blue lights and floored it.
Vehicle failing to stop, Newbrook Road. The speed is 70 miles an hour in a 30.
Within seconds, the driver is racing at over double the speed limit.
It's a Vauxhall Astra on a Yankee plate.
As soon as he failed to stop, he was easily in excess of double the speed limit. I started asking myself, why is this driver driving like this?
Chris alerts nearby units to the ongoing pursuit.
Can I have attack, further patrol, stop patrol, and authority to continue, please?
Chris just needs to sit tight and stay on the Astra's tail. But it's not going to be easy.
Invariably, you're on your own, and your nearest patrol could be miles away.
Heading away from 4 lanes end, I forgot it's through a red ATS, speed is 70 miles an hour.
On paper, Chris's BMW is in a different league to the target's Vauxhall. On the road, however, the Vauxhall driver can take risks that a trained traffic cop would never take.
We're straight across the roundabout.
With no thought for other road users, the driver has taken a roundabout in the opposite direction and is driving up the wrong side of the road.
A police officer in this situation will be thinking about the risks of their own driving, the risks of the vehicle being pursued.
Approaching red ATS, we are through the red ATS.
Of course, the person being pursued doesn't have the rules that the police have to abide by. So in that sense, their toolkit is much larger and their accountability is very different to that of the police.
We are now right, twist lane.
The risks he was taking, it's blatantly obvious they're not going to stop.
Hitting epic speeds, Chris needs to keep focused.
I know how quickly I can drive, and if that starts getting too quick for my abilities, then it gets called off.
We are right, Rivington Drive, and we are right again.
But Chris has the measure of the driver of this ancient Astra, and a plan is being drawn to shut down this chase.
I'd requested use of the helicopter and also asked for divisional patrols who were trained in deployment of Stinger.
Stingers are a really, really good and effective tool. It's all about bringing the pursuit to a safe conclusion. The Stinger is basically, it's like a bed of spikes with little tubes, and the Stinger device slowly deflates the tyres.
Chris, I've got an L division Bobby with a Stinger. Where do you want it, mate?
I'm not familiar with this area, mate. We're long playing still.
To successfully lay the trap, the Bobby with the Stinger needs to know where to deploy it. Chris needs to predict where he thinks the rogue driver is heading. The Stinger unit then has to get into position before the pursuit passes. And the whole tactic could be aborted if the runaway makes a last-minute change of direction.
9-9, I've lost visual.
Chris loses sight of the target.
Once you lose a vehicle, your pride takes a hit because you want to get the person who's been driving that way. You've gone through all that for nothing.
But all is not lost.
We're holding road now. I can see you, thank you.
The Eye in the Sky has joined the party, tracking the Astra from above.
Yeah, it's Park Road, it's just off Atherton.
Air supports are an absolute integral part of the pursuit.
I think he's going to be abandoning here, I think it's a dead end.
Yeah, that's okay.
We've got the advantage of having them above, so even though it's at night, they have thermal imaging.
I think he's obviously spotted us and he's coming back out onto Park Road.
With intel from the Eye in the Sky, Chris lies in wait for the Astra.
Just approaching Atherton Road now, stop by.
And he's back on his tail. With the net closing in, the Astra driver starts pushing the limits of his luck. This pedestrian had to sprint to avoid the speeding Vauxhall.
Stand by. Vehicle is through, red ATS.
Next, he bullies his way past a red traffic light, narrowly avoiding a head-on collision.
He shot through on red and there was an oncoming car that had to swerve to get around. I was just glad that no one else was hurt and he didn't collide with him.
The driver's determination to get away is strong, but his car isn't.
Sparks coming from the front of the wheels, from the discs and disc brakes.
I don't know whether his brakes were starting to fade, but there were sparks coming from the front wheel.
The cops see their chance and take it.
Stand by, vehicle.
Two on the vehicle stopped on Beacon Road. The driver is detained at present.
One detained, no outstanding.
The suspect pleaded guilty to dangerous driving and driving whilst disqualified and without insurance. He was sentenced to 12 months in prison and was also banned from driving for 3 years and 5 months.
Do I get frustrated when people put other people's safety at risk by the manner they're driving? Yes, I do, massively. Otherwise, I wouldn't do what I do. I'm very passionate about being a roads policing officer. Very passionate.
Huge.
And a disaster on a Welsh mountain sees pursuit and capture turn to search and rescue.
So unfortunately on that mountain there are places where you can go with just complete dead ends, and if you were to continue with, you could be in a really fatal situation.
When it comes to chasing down criminals in cars, the police pack a raft of tactics.
Behind the vehicle now.
For turning pursuit into capture.
Stand your back now.
But when criminals make off on 2 wheels,
through the bollards, I can't follow it any further.
Cops have to get creative. In Sheffield,
There was a call from the radio that we'd got 2 off-road bikes running the streets of the manor, and obviously we started pulling our resources together.
Still 2 up. No helmets.
Pursuing criminals on motorbikes is far from simple.
The problem with young motorcyclists riding around public land and housing estates, etc., is the fact that the danger to pedestrians is quite high, and the danger to themselves as well. If they come off, there's every chance they're going to have some sort of serious injuries. If we don't pursue that motorcycle, get out! And they continue in their activities, do they then go around the corner and hit our 2 or 3 year old child? It's a catch-22.
It looks like they're
the riders' movements to units on the ground.
It's anywhere on our side here.
998, back up the hill towards the top of Spinkhill, New Estate.
The bike and opens the throttle before the cops can catch him.
Just missed out on collaring the second bike.
Close, but not close enough.
When a suspect is fleeing the police, I'm quite sure that there is quite a bit of bravado in there, but I'm sure there's panic as well. They're desperate to get away from the police and they will do anything they can to try and evade capture.
But the police will do anything to make that capture, and the
chance as they come out of the field onto the cul-de-sac end. And what's running through my mind was, shall I or shan't I make tactical contact?
Tactical contact is a technique available to highly trained traffic cops to end a pursuit. They use their police cars to either spin or disable a criminal's car. People think that the police don't use tactical contact on motorbikes. But if a rider has resisted multiple attempts to stop them and public lives are in danger, then tactical contact is an option.
It was a 50-50 decision whether I go in and use the focus to actually stop that pursuit now. Because at the end of the day, even though we're trying to catch these people, ironically, we've got their welfare to consider as well.
Tim decides not to nudge the bikers, but once again the pair are on the loose.
Once they ended up on the road, we have all sorts of further problems then. We have other vehicles, we have pedestrians, potential children, dog walkers.
Making an arrest isn't simple. Throw in a bunch of baying bystanders and tensions go through the roof.
So why are we not moving?
Obstructing an officer while fulfilling their duties is an offence. Push it too far, and you'll find yourself arrested and facing charges all of your own.
You know, he's done all sorts of offences. He's got a helicopter above him. He's got multiple police cars. Inwardly, you're shouting, stop, you're going to get injured. Stop.
Perhaps he's heard you, Tim. The first rider to throw in the towel received a £200 fine and 6 points for dangerous driving. The rider who continued to give cops the runaround was wanted for a recall to prison, where he returned for 14 days. The cops are waging a war on crime. And when they go into battle, they go tooled up. Fast cars, highly trained dogs, and the phenomenal eye in the sky. The police will embrace anything that will give them the edge against their law-breaking targets. In North Wales, reports have come in about a disturbance at a residential address.
Police in this incident had a phone call to the control room that sounded extremely frantic, and the suspect had gone to the house of a family member and started making violent threats, and the family members were reporting that this suspect was threatening to burn the house down.
With the cops on their way, the suspect has disappeared into the night, but the police are taking his threats seriously.
There was a real risk that this person would come back to the house and carry out the threats of burning down the house.
Hunting down a suspect on a Welsh mountainside would usually mean a costly call-out for the police helicopter. But Paul's unit is equipped with the latest device in the cops' crime-fighting toolkit: the drone. These unmanned aerial vehicles give cops a go-anywhere alternative to the costly helicopter.
The introduction of drones into policing now means that we have got an aerial asset that can deploy to a great deal more types of incident. And often where there's bad weather, the helicopter might not be able to attend, we can still drive to a location and still fly in bad weather.
The police helicopter may be faster and able to fly for longer periods of time, but the drone's low cost and flexibility mean that it can be deployed anywhere at any time. The North Wales Police Drone Unit was only established a year ago, but they've already made a big impact. From assisting fire crews tackling mountainside blazes to providing aerial support on high-risk firearms operations. But their current priority is to pursue and capture a domestic violence suspect.
So in this case we were called by the control room telling us that there was an urgent and very immediate search, and the drone pilot drove there on a response drive and got there really quickly.
The drone can be prepped and airborne in just 3 minutes. Soaring to a maximum height of 400 feet, the aircraft is equipped with a hybrid camera, boasting super low light capabilities and a thermal imaging camera. And right now, that heat-sensing camera is lighting up the suspect as he makes his escape along the tree-lined mountainside.
Once the drone pilot located the subject, they managed to carry on tracking them as they went through woodland, and we could see, even through the canopies of the trees on the thermal camera, this person creeping through there, then passing open ground as well.
Oblivious to his aerial escort, the suspect heads back towards a nearby village.
Criminals are quite used to a police helicopter now turning up and searching. They haven't all quite clicked onto the fact that drones are being used by the police, and it's not always easy to hear the drone, particularly if it's windy, and you might not see it if it's directly above.
What the suspect has heard is the dog unit that's just arrived and are currently being briefed over the radio by Paul's team.
Quite often the drone pilots find themselves in a position where they know where the subject is and they're the only people in the operation who do. They've then got to be very good at communication via the radio, and often in areas that they're unfamiliar with.
Spooked by the sound of the German Shepherd, the suspect plunges into the darkness of an open field. But there's no hiding from a flying thermal imaging camera.
You can just see some officers getting into position ready to make an arrest near a gateway. The suspect doesn't know they're there because it's pitch black at that location, and the camera picks up the moment where the suspect walks straight into the officers who've been prepared, and he was arrested. The suspect really kicked off when he was found by the officers. They made that arrest, but his behaviour was really appalling, and he was taken to custody really quickly after that.
Police drones aren't solely used for pursuit and capture. They're just as capable at search and rescue. One of the most frequent tasks for the drone unit is to find vulnerable missing persons.
The priority is finding them as quickly as possible. We have to understand why they're missing and try and get some information about where they were last seen, where they might be going and what their intention is.
An elderly gentleman with dementia has been missing for 18 hours.
There were an enormous amount of resources involved in searching for him. But the longer it went on, the more critical it became.
Miraculously, Paul's unit has located the man laying in long grass on an embankment between a railway and a motorway.
You can see one of the PCSOs looking up and giving a thumbs up to the drone, and you realise what a privilege it is to be involved in something like that.
The drone is also the perfect tool to tackle the local terrain.
In North Wales we have some really incredible mountains, some amazing mountain walking locations, and of course quite often people do get into difficulties. So deploying a drone can really speed up the process of finding a casualty.
A group of hill walkers have come to climb Trevan, a mountain standing at over 3,000 feet.
They'd probably started a little bit too late in the day, and although it was summer, the weather was closing in and it became quite cloudy and there was some rain. So I'm not sure they were entirely prepared for that.
Aborting their attempt to reach the summit, two of the climbers are separated from the main party.
And as they broke off from the group, they got off course and ended up coming down some very steep ground that was very slippery, and there were some large drops. Unfortunately, on that mountain, there are places where you can go with just complete dead ends, and if you were to continue, you could be in a really fatal situation.
The climbers had got stuck above a cliff and were unable to find their way back. The call goes into mountain rescue, and Terry's drone unit is asked to assist.
We set up location with the rescue team, and they were successful actually in finding the casualties, but could only see one of them. So the drone deployed and was then able to see where the second casualty was, and that was a girl who was laying on the ground, at this point very cold, very wet, and really quite exhausted, and actually quite scared as well. And I think for them, seeing the drone, they realised that they were now in a situation where things were going to improve.
With Paul's assistance, Mountain Rescue reached both casualties and safely roped them off the mountain to the waiting ambulances. In the past year, the units have attended 1,700 calls and located 88 missing people.
I'm really proud to look at these incidents, look at this footage and see the fruit of our work, the fruit of our labour. Realise that all the training that we've done over the last year, these guys that I'm working with are new to flying drones. They've picked it up and they've just really run with it. So after a year of flying, to get results like that, it's just fabulous.
Coming up, when a carjacker plays rough, a traffic cop gives as good as he gets.
Vehicle's trying to reverse ram, I've closed it down.
While the majority of cars are stolen stealthily while their owners are in their homes, some thieves are taking a more brazen approach. Known as carjacking, desperate criminals are using violence to steal cars from under their owners' noses. In Bury, PC Phil Raymond is on the hunt for a car thief in a stolen Vauxhall Insignia.
This situation was quite extreme. The car was stolen by means of a carjacking, and the owner, in an effort to try and stop that happening, was actually run over by the perpetrator. Now that is serious and unusual.
Phil's been hunting the target car for 20 minutes when a silver Vauxhall passes. Right car, right colour. Phil gets right on it.
Behind that Insignia now, right lane, just off Watson Road. It's a loop back up towards the road, stand by.
With blues and twos dialed up to 11, there's no doubt that Phil wants him to stop. But the suspect is making it quite clear that stopping isn't an option.
Sergeant's just doing loops at the minutes in the back street.
It was ducking and diving into a lot of residential streets. I can only assume that it was heading for somewhere, or trying to head for somewhere that it knew that it could go where the police wouldn't follow, such as a park, an alleyway.
Having failed in his hunt for a place to ditch the Insignia, the carjacker changes tactics and heads back to the main road and hits the gas. Phil's behind the wheel of a BMW 330, a driver-focused machine that outstrips the carjacker's Insignia on speed, acceleration, and power. However, with a desperate suspect behind the wheel, anything is possible. And this suspect is desperate enough to put lives at risk in a bid to get away.
Speed's 100 miles an hour in a 30, vehicle overtaking slow-moving traffic to the opposite. Risk is proportionate due to the offence. I'm happy to continue.
There's a lot of pressure, especially in the early phases of pursuit, especially at high speeds like this pursuit. And the police driver will be constantly assessing, is it safe to continue this or should I abort it?
Phil doesn't have to abandon the pursuit. A learner driver creates an impromptu rolling roadblock, forcing the runaway driver to about turn.
Vehicle held up by slow-moving traffic, stand by. Face
to face with his target, Phil can almost reach out and grab him.
It's one male occupant, I might have to make contact here.
Tactical contact is when a cop uses their own vehicle to disable a suspect. A high-risk move. It's only used as a last resort.
It's potentially a dangerous situation for all involved because it's two lumps of metal coming together. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong if it's not done just right, which is why the officers that do it have to be trained and authorised to do so.
It's right, down to a dead end.
But tactical contact might not be needed. A dead end could mean game over.
Oh, it's a roundabout at the end, it's going to come back out.
The slippery suspect gets away once again. The driver shows an utter disregard for other road users, dangerously overtaking and barreling through red lights before perilously taking to the wrong side of the road at more than 70 miles per hour.
Vehicle contravening, keep left into the offside.
The most important thing for most drivers involved in pursuits is safety. There is always that balance to strike around not getting drawn into a competition with whoever it is you might be pursuing and actually making that decision to say, OK, this isn't safe, I need to stop, I need to withdraw, and it will come back another day. Safety has to be the priority, and if that means you stop, then you stop.
But on this occasion, it's the runaway who appears to be coming to a standstill.
I think for me and my team, whenever we saw somebody slowing down, there was either two things going to happen. It was either a decamp or we were going to get rammed.
And this driver is going for option B.
I have been reverse rammed. I am closed it down to prevent injury.
When a cop thinks the driver is about to ram them, they have two options. The first is to reverse fast. This reduces the closing speed of the aggressor's car. Or they could close the gap, so the suspect can't build up enough momentum to cause significant damage. Phil is closing the gap, but the suspect keeps trying.
Vehicle is trying to reverse ram, I've closed it down. Again, vehicle reverse ram, now I've closed it down to minimise damage.
But when the cop car takes a beating, Phil decides enough is enough.
Continuation, Hornby Street.
No more being rammed. It's time to show this driver who's the boss. The insignia has been dealt a mighty blow. But eyeing a long spell behind bars, the suspect sets himself up for another swing at Phil. It's a high-stakes game of bumper cars, but Phil comes out on top. To take back control, Phil's tactical contact involved ramming the suspect's vehicle from behind in a complete role reversal. Disoriented, the suspect spins in the opposite direction before crashing into parked cars. Phil pulls alongside, using his vehicle to pin the driver between him and the parked cars, and in doing so, blocks the driver's door and a quick escape. Phil has used his car to totally disable the insignia. But with smoke billowing from the bonnet, the driver is still frantically revving the engine. With the driver refusing to lift off the gas, the only way to get to him is through the window.
He didn't want to stop, he didn't want to get caught, and was still up to the very, very end, doing everything he could to get away.
With the window smashed, a spray of CS gas finally gets the driver to take his foot off the accelerator. Pursued and captured, the carjacker was convicted of robbery, dangerous driving, and disqualified driving. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Neither Phil nor the suspect was seriously injured in the incident, which is less than could be said for the Beamer.
The collateral damage was worth it. It was a very serious offence that the person committed with complete disregard. The police driver, I think, did an exceptional job.
In this episode of Pursuit and Capture, 7 criminals were arrested. In court, they received a combined total of over 19 years in prison and were issued with almost 7 years of driving bans.